We're building a street legal open wheel race car. Welcome to Project F1.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we have some things to talk about. We are no longer putting the R6 motor in the kart. That is a 180 horsepower Yamaha CP4 engine. Definitely gonna make way more power than the 120 horsepower crank from the R6 motor. This makes about 180 at the crank. We should see around 160 to 170 rear wheel horsepower. But what's really cool is if you know anything about the R1, that beautiful sound and just how good that engine is. This is literally the same exact engine, but with like the S internals. And it's not really detuned, but they just changed a few things. So it actually makes more torque with the steel internals. And instead of the titanium internals that you have on the R1 standard model, this checks all the boxes. What's awesome about this engine compared to the R1 is that the R1 is like a 13.1 compression ratio, which is really good. They make like 200 horsepower at the crank, but unfortunately, if you put certain parts on there on a high compression motor, it doesn't like it and things can go kaboom. This is a 12-to-1 compression ratio, which means, I don't know, hypothetically, we could throw more air at it and it would make more power reliably. Fingers crossed. Also, when I started this thing, it was literally supposed to be like a weekend project of just throwing a street bike engine into a Formula race car, but this has changed completely. We've made a lot of changes. Let's just say that this here behind me is now my 1990 Mazda Miata. Spoiler alert, I bought a Miata because we're gonna use a lot of parts off the Miata as well as the frame. So it'll be clean title, it'll be street legal, it'll actually be functional and not just a novelty item like, oh, we built a Formula One race car. No, we're building a street legal open wheel race car. All right, so to show you guys off camera, like I said, I had a lot of stuff to do. I didn't want to bore you guys with a full episode of like welding out and TIGging all this stuff. So basically I am like 90% done welding out the whole chassis. Don't worry about where there's any old paint or some of the surface rust and oxidation that's on this frame. We're gonna have it sandblasted and powder coated so it'll look like $1 million. So you may notice the front nose is now 3 inches longer. And the reason that I did that is because this is our crash protection. In case of a front end impact, this is what's supposed to crinkle so that it doesn't get to, I know it looks like a coffin, but it doesn't get to the coffin. The frame right here, that's going to keep the pilot safe. That front is meant to be the weak point. Also, what I've done is shout out to my boy Wolf. He is the one that designs like all these gussets, and we're gonna have a lot of tabbing and a lot of custom metal work on here that you'll see, nice little touches. He CNCs and plasmas all those out for us. So I've got all of those welded in. We now have structural rigidity without needing to go back and have to put it in later. So my goal for this episode, I want to have mounts for the engine to where it's sitting under its own weight, and I also want to build the cradle. So off camera, I took this 1.5 inches and you can see I started beefing it up and reinforcing everything in there. So I have this measured out how I want it. It's 40 inches long off the back of the frame. And any of you wondering, yes, that is slightly longer than like a cross cart or anything like that, because I want the weight on this cart to be distributed very 50-50 like. So pretty much, even though the weight and the spool are back here, instead of putting it mid, I'm trying to balance out all the weight. So when you have a 200-pound pilot, yes, it'll be ultra light right there, but by spreading this out, you're spreading the weight along the chassis. Hope that makes sense. Or it could suck and we have to redo it. Who knows? Now, let me show you one more really trick piece that we're installing today. This here is our rear differential. This is a really trick piece of kit, dude. Like, huge shout out to Alan with XKARTS, because he actually makes these for like cross cart projects. You know, if you don't want to make your own and have to spend a few $100s in laser cut files and then 40 hours of welding to try to make it look half as good, he sells these for like $700-800. Definitely check them out. There's a link in the description. And what's cool is these have been tested at about 200 horsepower on Busa motors, and luckily no issues. Plus, Alan likes what we're doing here, so he's actually going to kind of be behind the scenes and just tell us if there's any things that we missed, or we can beef it up or make it better if we ever want to build another one of these or modify it later down the road. Super stoked to announce that. That's going to make our job a lot easier. So now my plan, first I want to build like this box right here that goes on the back of this subframe, and this is actually going to be like 1.5 inches further, and my goal is to mount this up perfectly straight and centered so that our left and right axles will be identical. I don't want the rear end to be offset at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut out some 1.5 inches, start boxing some metal out, and make things. We have a cube. So now I have, and I'm just tacking all of this stuff in just to give you guys a good meat and potatoes video and mount this stuff. But I am gonna end up pulling the spool, pulling the engine, and then fully welding this off camera. I just don't wanna bore you guys. So we have the spool mounted in there. It is pretty tight, but I can still loosen it as I need to. And then also we'll have a bar back here that'll have 2 tie rods that connect to those joints so we can adjust chain slack and also have a stiff mounting point, you know, nice and rigid in the back for that spool. And now on the motor, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put another 1.5 inch tube here in the middle. I'm going to have these little tabs that come off and mount to this. Then I'm gonna take some 3/4 stainless and basically make sleeves that'll be the correct length and will weld to that square bar that'll be right there. Once everything's done, I can go ahead and gusset it and strengthen it up as I need to. Back to time lapse. Here's where we are, boys. Man, that is a lot of work for what seems to be like a little bit of progress. But for you guys watching, this is like a huge milestone. The motor is pretty much where it needs to be. I have a 530 rear sprocket, 530 chain, but unfortunately the 530 front sprocket for the MT10 I ordered is the wrong one. Sprocket Center is sending me the actual one that we need for this bike, so we can check that off the list. But I'm trying to visualize how I'm gonna do this bottom mount. It would be as easy as just putting a bar across the bottom of the cradle, but you have to keep in mind, for one, the chain. 2, we also have the exhaust that comes out under the engine. And what we wanna do is leave this pretty much free and open because we want the exhaust to come up and then come through the cradle here, and like the muffler, you know, trumpets will sit kind of on top of this under the wing. I need to come up with a way to mount the bottom part of the engine without it being in the way, but also make it look good. Remember, I'm doing this project without a tube bender. If I had a tube bender, this would be a lot easier. I think I'm going to basically mount up the plates where they should be and then brace it, like brace floating mounts kind of thing. Another thing I have to keep in mind is when we start building the suspension, I don't want to have to redesign the wheel. So I'm hoping that we can make the suspension work with these measurements. If not, I'm gonna also have to make bars that come off of that. Hey, I'm having a good time building this. If it sucks, I have to redo it. And that sucks, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I'm just gonna start sticking pipe together and basically come up with something. So I got the sidebars in, left and right. Like I say, tacked up, you know, not fully welded out. That's basically how the cradle's gonna be. We will have cross bracing and all kinds of stuff. We'll beef this up later in another episode. But now what I'm gonna do is I need to make the top bar, if you would, which is almost like one bar here and then one bar here. And that'll hold the top mount. So pretty much like the engine is not really a stress point, but it will tie everything together, almost like a monocoque, if you would. The engine is actually a part of the structural rigidity of the chassis. The only thing is the top bar will be removable. So if we ever have to pull the engine or anything like that, it'll be easy to do. So this is already nice and sturdy. You can see I've got the tabs there. I got this cut out. I had to get a new drill bit, but basically This is gonna sit like that. We'll clean it up and make it pretty. And then that gap down there, we'll put a little bar to beef that up and have some cross bracing between both of those. The biggest thing, like I said, about the exhaust is we have to leave it open in the middle so that 2-into-1 can come through here, and then the rest will just be beefing it up. So I'm gonna pull the rear spool off so I have more room to work with, as well as I spoke with Alan with XKARTS, and we're gonna beef up this mount here. I'm gonna pull the spool and then put some of that flat stock bar on the back and the front side just to beef up those mounts as well. Let's get back to work. I time-lapsed it, but somehow the footage got lost because the camera overheated. But now I can show you better what I was talking about. So now we have this 3/16 heavy gauge steel that the motor mounts to. I put in some 1-inch tube crossbar, and then this is 1.5 inches like the rest of the frame. I know that little 5/8 nugget there, yes, it's just, it happens. Like if you're doing this, rear diff has to be centered, and the engine kind of goes wherever the rear diff is centered. So that's why the engine is a little offset in the chassis, but I got that built out, and now the exhaust can come underneath that. I'm also going to put like some 1-inch square here, so that'll be boxed in more right here. But that's tacked up, ready to go. I've got some beads on the left and right. So now what I'm going to do, oh, also, I did start tabbing in the top mounts. So it's just tacked in right now. I'm just starting to box everything in. We'll intertwine everything and put it together more later down the road. So now what I'm gonna do is I've got some 90-degree angle, and I'm basically going to mount it to where this will come around this, and it'll have 2 mounting points that are bar that goes to the front that'll also have mounting points. We'll connect, and then we'll be able to create those front engine mounts. What a freaking mess that was. Oh my gosh. Yes, guys, don't worry. I'm going to do a shop cleanup. I literally have to do it like every episode after filming the race car videos. So basically how this works is you have the cradle and the chassis that's all hard mounted, this bar, all that stuff. With this backbone, if you would, that mounts from the back, it mounts to the front there, and it mounts to the cradle or the rear end of the car. How this works is once this is bolted in, now you have the structural rigidity of like a full hard mounted chassis. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring two little bars off of here to a piece of tube and basically make our motor mounts for the front of the engine. So then when this backbone is bolted into the motor and the chassis and everything, it becomes like one structural piece instead of like, you know, just having motor mounts in there. I know. It's a lot of work, but I'm not a welder by any means. So please don't roast me in the comments on my welds. I'm having fun. And this is a great way for me to like get better at skills that I don't usually do. So I can already tell like from how I've started to where we're at now, my TIG welding has come a long way. Not professional by any means, but hey, I'm having a good time and it's gonna do its job. And don't worry about this stuff. This is all gonna get gusseted in. I just boxed this in, but this is 1 inch. So it's not the strongest metal. We're keeping this cart lightweight, but this will have basically like our gussets, you know, custom work like we put in the front half of the car. It's gonna be through the back as well. I'm gonna cut up some tube and get to working on the motor mounts. Man, it's so freaking cool, like seeing this project come together. Oh man, I'm so stoked. In the time lapse, you could see I basically just tacked on the engine mounts and basically like the rest of this, I kind of just tacked it all together. I tried to get as much weld in and finish out what I could of the boxing part there, but it's basically tacked on. So what I did is I pulled it off once everything was mock fit and fitting correctly and nice and sturdy, at least enough with the tacks. I pulled it off just to give it a couple more welds. I didn't want to fully weld it out though, because this could warp off the cart. So I'm gonna finish welding out that Y bar once the motor's pulled out and I weld out the whole frame. So I'm not too worried about it now. I'm gonna jump over to the left side and get the left side motor mount done. And then I have a surprise for you guys. We're gonna weigh this thing. Go. Let's see what it weighs. You can see I have a little tension on the strap. So if I take it off, it is at zero. See if it falls forward. That is floating can see it is not touching the ground. It is hovering. And we are at 366 pounds, guys. 366. That's right on point where we want to be. We want to be sub 700 pounds. So that's literally like, even if we're 350, 400 pounds more, with everything else going into it, we're 700, 750 pounds. We're going to hit our 200 horsepower mark, maybe 250 once you see what we got in store for it. But freaking awesome, dude. 366 pounds. Man. Oh, I'm excited. Man, this feels crazy how far we've come. Thank you guys so much for watching and literally joining me while I get the opportunity to build my dream race car. I can't even believe this thing is 366 pounds. I'm like 230, 235. So if I can get this to 950, sub 1,000 pounds with me in it, this thing's gonna be a ripper. I'm absolutely stoked. Plus, if you guys have never done fab work, like it's taken me over a week just to shoot this 15, 20-minute video for you guys. So your boy's been going nonstop, hard in the paint, trying to get this thing not done, but at least see some progression with it. And I'm just so happy how far we've come. This is episode 3, and we already have a full chassis. We now have the cradle done in the rear. Yeah, the seat's just sitting in here because I gotta pull all this stuff off to weld it out anyways. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you're liking the content. Subscribe to stick around and see how this thing ends. Also, I do read the comments, so leave a comment down below. What are you thinking of the build? Any tips and tricks? I'm not a professional welder, but I am getting a lot better. Like honestly, I'd love to know your guys' opinion. Any tips and tricks you might have, what you're thinking, what we can do better, what we can improve on. I'm having a blast shooting this content. I think this thing's gonna turn out absolutely sick. In the next episode, we're gonna build the A-arms. So we're gonna see the track width, we're gonna throw some wheels and tires on this thing and basically have a roller, hopefully get to the suspension design and start doing that geometry. But I'm just so happy how far we've come in such a little bit of time. Also, I've got huge updates on the RC8. I got to build my dream spec motorcycle. If you follow me on TikTok or you've seen any of the shorts or the stories, things like that, you guys already know the bike I'm gonna show you next episode. And I'm filming full time now. So I promise you guys, I'll have a new episode every single week. We're gonna be doing a lot of badass things around here. Yes, I am a motorcycle guy and I shoot motorcycle content, but even the race car we're building is motorcycle inspired. And by the weight and the looks of it, we're gonna be right on point where we wanna be in building an ultra light, street legal race car. Thank you guys so much for watching and we'll see you next week.